Valentine's Day was coming up. My boyfriend and I had planned a cute dinner like most couples do. As we were walking into the restaurant, there's this couple outside weirdly staring at my boyfriend and me. I slightly shoved my boyfriend's arm as we got inside, and he gave out his name to be put on the wait list. The host said it would be a 45-minute wait and she would text us when our table was ready. My boyfriend said, "Let's go to the mini golf across the street." So, we're walking back to his car, and the lady from the couple stood up and held up her hand, introducing herself as Mrs. Mary. I found it really weird and looked at my boyfriend. The lady still had her hand out. I wasn't trying to be rude, so I gave her a shake. The lady went on to explain that she and her husband think we're a great-looking couple, and they're photographers. They think we would make great photos and asked us to follow them to their studio, as she believed the wait time would be long. She went on to say that she had no card on her, but their place was a 7-minute drive away and they could take us there as well. Red flags were going off, and my boyfriend politely declined, letting her know we had things to do. The look she gave was still one of the most haunting looks ever as she smiled and sat down next to her husband. As we got in the car, I told my boyfriend how creepy that interaction was and how the husband didn't even say a word. As we entered the mini-golf place, we were pretty surprised to find it empty. We laughed the situation off, but in reality, I was still creeped out. This place is not really huge. You can see the front door on all the levels. As we were on our 5th round, I heard the entrance bell ring. I turned to look and my heart sank. It was the same lady with her husband. She seemed to look around, and then, as we made eye contact, she gave me the creepiest smile. I let my boyfriend know, and he turned to look. As they were getting their things, I told my boyfriend I was uncomfortable and we should just go wait in a car, as 15 minutes had already passed, so it wouldn't be much longer. He agreed, and we turned around. They were right behind us, giving us the widest smiles. "Crazy how we both came to this spot," said Mrs. Mary. This time, the husband said, "We should face each other, Mary versus Robert." My boyfriend's heart sank in that moment, as his last name is Robert. We politely declined, not wanting to know how they knew that information, and we said we had to go. Both of their smiles faded as we rushed out of there. I told my boyfriend we should just call it a night and go back to his place since it was closer than mine, plus my parents wouldn't be home until Sunday morning. He said we would go after dinner and not let some random weird couple ruin the night for us. We waited about 15 minutes in his car, talking about how weird the situation was. He got a text from the restaurant saying our table was ready. We ate dinner, and he insisted on paying since it's Valentine's Day, as we usually split the bill. He went to the bathroom, and as I was waiting, I thought I saw that lady peeking out from around a corner. I convinced myself it was just in my head. My boyfriend got out and was ready to go. To get to his place, you have to take this long road surrounded by trees. As we started the drive, we noticed a car following behind. I let my boyfriend know, and we headed into a CVS parking lot. I had to use the restroom, and since it was going to be a drive, we both got out and went. When we came out, we didn't see that car that was potentially following us anywhere, so we made our way to his house. You know that road I talked about earlier, being surrounded by trees? Well, while we were driving on it, about 5 to 7 minutes onto this road, we heard a loud pop and my boyfriend stopped his car. His 2 front tires had popped. He put 2 and 2 together and ran to the car and said, "Get out, there's not much more time before they get here." He cut his engine, turned off the lights, and locked the door. I was so scared and confused, not knowing what was going on. I told him we should wait in the car, but he quickly got me and we ran into the woods. He told me to shush. We were hiding behind some trees and bushes. While we hid, he called the cops and quickly explained where we were and what was happening. The operator asked him to stay on the line, saying the cops would be there in a couple of minutes, but he said he couldn't stay on the line and hung up. As we stayed laying down, we heard a car engine coming up. My boyfriend said to lay flat, and he did too. We heard the engine stop and then the familiar voice of Mrs. Mary, if that was even her real name. She yelled, "We took too long." We heard a car door close and then a car quickly sped away. We stayed down until the cops got there, which was about 2 minutes later. We explained the situation and were told we would be contacted if something came up. I called my sister to come pick us up, and he called a tow truck for his car. For years later, nothing has come up, and we never found out what they wanted or who they were. We're now married with a crazy story to tell our kids. Anna was yet another teenager who would have to spend Valentine's Day alone. She threw herself on the bed, sighing. She was exhausted after an afternoon of hard work. She booted her laptop on her legs and started to check out her social media. Everyone's statuses were filled with heart emojis, photos of hugs, and mushy phrases. Seeing that made her sick, and it's not like she gets sick easily. But suddenly she realized the stubbornness she was feeling in her stomach was due to something different, or rather, someone different. She started to profile the profile of a boy named Jeffrey Woods. She opened the chat tab and there they were, dozens of messages written by her with no response from Jeffrey. She felt very sad, and a tear started to go down her cheek. She wiped the tear using a corner of the blanket, but then she realized she had stained her cheek with blood. The blood came from the body of a girl that lay by her side, just as if she were a horror doll. Anna casually set aside the body with a kick. It fell on the floor, face down, revealing several stab wounds on her back. Filled with gloom, Anna looked at the splashes of blood on the wall, as well as an inscription written in blood that said, "Sleep with me, my love." That was another message for the same recipient. Anna looked back at the chat window and hesitated about writing yet another message. Outside of the house, Luis was crouching while he observed Anna lying on the bed. He had been following her lately and was having a great time observing her massacres. It really seemed the pupil was besting the master. It was awesome how, with just a couple of knife movements, she ended the parents in the living room, and the way she savagely stabbed that girl in the back. You could tell that Anna had the same spirit and bloodlust as Luis. Maybe he was starting to feel something for her. The vibration on his phone interrupted his thoughts. He had a new message from Anna. He observed her again lying on the bed typing at her laptop, and the smile on his whitest face turned more marked and evil. He stood up and went away from that place while answering the message on his phone. Evening came, and Luis arrived at the doorsteps of a small restaurant on the outskirts. He covered his head with his hood. He looked at the entrance. It was filled with pompous decorations with hearts and cupids everywhere, with a sign that said, "Today's special, Valentine's Day dinner." That made him feel sick as he strongly held a knife he had hidden under his hoodie. His lust for killing increased, and he put his eye on a woman in the side alley. It was most likely one of the employees taking out the trash. He was about to rush towards her but managed to contain himself. There would be enough time for that later, but for now, he was waiting for someone else. In the alley, Dora threw some trash bags into the trash container, tired from the several work hours she still had before her. That was the date she hated the most in the entire year: the hypocrisy, the unnecessary spending, the ridiculousness of it all, and all for people to go back to arguing and yelling at each other the next day, showing their true selves. Moreover, her boss required her to wear that embarrassing pink uniform, smile at all times, and congratulate the customers. When she came back into the restaurant, for a moment, she reveled in the idea of grabbing one of the knives in the kitchen and venting all of her frustration by becoming the author of the biggest Valentine's Day massacre in history. But those were just dark humor, she told herself. She would never do something like that. When she was heading back to the kitchen, she saw a couple of young people coming to the restaurant, a couple of creepy and weird teenagers. As soon as Luis and Anna went in, a waiter stopped them and asked if they had a reservation. Luis said, "Of course, here it is." With a swift movement, Luis sliced the throat of the waiter, stopping him from uttering another word. "Now we can sit wherever we want." "Thank you." "Here, have a tip," said Luis as he proceeded to stab the waiter in the gut, finally ending his suffering. Luis and Anna gave a quick glance at the half a dozen tables occupied with couples who were having a romantic dinner. Luis told Anna, "What do you think, my love? You go for the ones on the right, and I go for the ones on the left." Anna responded, "Oh, I'd rather go for the ones on the left because that's the side where the heart is." With knives in hand, Luis and Anna quickly pounced on their victims. The first couples died practically without realizing what was going on. The next ones were unable to react, paralyzed in fear due to such a macabre scene. The last couples had a small chance to escape, but Luis and Anna quickly cut them off, making it impossible for them to run away. Luis's and Anna's synchronization as a couple of killers was truly lethal. When they had finally killed all of the couples, a deathly silence filled the place. The two of them looked into each other's eyes, and Anna decided to get closer and kiss him. But Luis stopped her at the last moment. "Honey, wait, we're not done yet." Anna nodded, trying to hide her embarrassment. Then the two killers split up to finish the job. Luis went towards the kitchen, and Anna went to the toilets. When Anna got into the women's toilet, she saw how all of the stalls were empty except for one. She remained very still, attentively listening inside, until she heard someone gasping. She rushed towards the occupied stall, opening the door with a kick, and found a female cook curled inside and paralyzed. In a very slight way, Anna said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was occupied." In the kitchen, Luis looked around carefully but didn't see anybody. He turned away to leave the kitchen, but all of a sudden, Dora came out of her hiding place under a cabinet, armed with a kitchen knife. She rushed towards Luis and stabbed him in the shoulder. Luis fell on the floor and quickly searched for something to finish him off, but her hard stab was not enough. Witnessing what had happened, Anna furiously rushed into the kitchen and knocked down Dora, making Dora hit her head and fall unconscious. "Whoa, another sourpuss who hates Valentine's Day, huh? Is it because you don't have someone to spend it with?" Anna and Luis looked at each other with passion once again. "Maybe a change of luck might help her find someone," said Anna while pointing at a bottle of bleach in a cabinet. When Luis saw it, he looked at Anna with a hopeful smile. Minutes later, when the policemen arrived, they witnessed what can only be described as a macabre show. Everyone present in the restaurant had been savagely killed. Only a waitress had survived, who now had several burns on her face. On each table, the corpses of the couples remained seated with their hearts extracted from their chests and put close together on the table. On the wall, there was a message written in blood that said, "Now go to sleep, lovers." A little bit of background: I, 23 female, was 20 at the time. I moved in with my uncle in San Antonio, Texas, with the agreement that I didn't have to pay rent as long as I helped him out with chores and my cousins. I got a job at a super coffee chain downtown, close to the touristy part of the area. We had a lot of regulars and a lot of homeless people coming in and out. I felt relatively safe, though, because I got to know the people there and it was almost always a lot of foot traffic. I used to even take walks after work in the area, especially since I was super close to the Riverwalk. Skip to a couple of months into the job, and I was friends with everyone I worked with. We were all super close. On this particular day, it was one of my coworkers' last days. There were about 3 guys who had been there almost all morning. They hadn't bought anything and were just hanging out, which was not unusual for my location. On my break, I decided to walk down to a nearby drugstore so I could get a farewell card, maybe a small gift for said coworker. I walked down and put my earphones in, and before I could press play, I heard the door open behind me and footsteps following. Whoever it was caught up to me and started walking beside me, matching my pace exactly. I turned to look, and it was one of the guys that had been there all morning. He was a bit taller than me. He tried to ask for my number, and I kindly told him no. He persisted, and I, with a short temper, told him to screw off. He stopped and stared at me in surprise, as I don't really look like someone who would speak up. He stood there as I walked away, and by the time I went back, they were gone. I proceeded to tell my coworkers about the encounter, and we laughed it off. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Every time after that, he would already be there, just hanging out or walking in mid-shift, sometimes with somebody else and sometimes by himself. I assumed he was just another homeless person because how else was he always able to be around? My shifts were pretty sporadic. Some days I opened, some days I closed, and some days I worked mid, but it didn't matter. He was always there. At that point, I started to feel paranoid. I would always catch him staring in my direction. He never ordered anything, never talked to me, and luckily wouldn't follow me. He would just sit there watching me. I started mentioning it to my coworkers, and they started noticing it too. One of my team leaders would help me out by sending me to wash dishes in the back or organize the cooler. My coworkers would also try to place themselves to block me from his view. I started feeling uncomfortable at work. Sometimes when I closed, a coworker would walk me to my car before heading home themselves. Then one day, when he was just staring, I was working the register. He walked up and ordered a water. I asked for his name for the order. I now had his first name. He took his water and sat down. I had mentioned him before to my manager, but because he hadn't really done anything, we couldn't do much besides noting it to the manager. The next day I worked with my manager. It was him, 2 other coworkers, and me. I told him I had to go to the bathroom real quick. There were 2 bathrooms right next to each other, but sort of hidden from the coffee bar and register, and they weren't gender specific. I walked around the bar to the lobby area. I had to pass his table and walk down the lobby to get to the bathrooms. I noticed him get up before going inside. I sat down to do my business when someone rattled the knob. I shouted out that it was occupied, but whoever it was kept rattling the door until I finished. When I opened the door, no one was there, and walking back, I noticed him adjusting back to his chair. I was super freaked out and told my boss. He couldn't go and tell him off, though, because we had no proof that it was him. Later that shift, he got up and picked up a coffee from the pickup area. My boss assumed he had ordered it and let him take it, but I told him it wasn't for him and that wasn't even his name. My boss used this as an opportunity to tell him if he ever does something like that again, he won't be able to come back. The man apologized and actually stuck to the rules every day after that, but he went back to just watching me. Cut to Valentine's Day. One of my team leaders and I would be scheduled to work certain Thursdays after close to deep clean the store. We would stay until 2 a.m. This was one of those Thursdays. We were almost done, and I had to clean the bathrooms as one of the last chores. I finished, and as I walked out of the bathroom, I saw him peeking in with both of his hands pressed to the window, eyes wide, just staring at me with this super intense look. I froze for a second, just staring back. I noticed on one of his palms that was pressed to the window, a purple foam heart. He didn't move at all. I shouted, "Lily, Lily. He's here, he's back." She barely hears me through the music that we were blasting. Lily was the team leader who would help me hide from him, so she knew the huge fear I had towards him. She walked towards the bathroom, shouting back, "What are you saying? What's going on?" I told her again, "He's here, he's watching me." She started shouting through the window, "You need to leave. If you don't leave, we're calling the police." I stepped out a little to see if he'd leave, and he's ignoring her, his eyes fixated in my direction. I stepped back into the bathroom, and my leader continued to shout at him to leave and threatened him with the police. About 5 minutes passed by, and he realized that I wasn't stepping out until he left, so he did. The next day, my lead and I told my manager I wanted to file a police report. He told me no, to wait until he talked to his boss. He showed up again that day, but I was only there to talk to my manager and left right after. When I got home, a friend convinced me to call the police anyway, so I texted my boss that I didn't care what he said and that I was scared and going to file the report. I dialed 911 and told them a summarized version. They told me they were going to send someone to where I live to take the official report. 2 officers were so nice and supportive. I told them my whole story and how my boss didn't feel the need to get the cops involved since I wasn't harmed. The officers told me that I should have called right away and defended me, saying they could get him for harassment. I thanked them, and they told me that if he showed up, I should dial 911 immediately so they could take him in for trespassing and harassing. I think that day my manager banned him and warned him because he never showed up to the coffee shop again. A few months later, when I was comfortable again, I went out with some friends to walk around. We were close to where I worked, and as we rounded the corner, I saw him. So I ducked into a little corner store and my friends followed. I told them I saw him, and they kept an eye out. Once he was out of view, we left the store, and that was the very last time I saw him. This started when I was 14, female. Now I'm 21, and I just transferred to a new high school in the middle of the school year as a freshman with my twin sister. I was enrolled in a Spanish 2 class where I met Noah, and that was where the obsession began. When I started my class and met Noah, I initially thought he was attractive. He was tall, had brown hair, and beautiful eyes for a guy. But I did notice he was extremely shy. Noah was kind of awkward, but I made up excuses to talk to him, asking about the homework and engaging in other small talk. He seemed to appreciate it and asked if I wanted to walk around during lunch and talk, so I happily agreed. It was clear that Noah was not very confident and didn't know how to initiate conversation, so I often did most of the talking. I even asked him for his phone number. After a few days of texting and talking, I could tell he didn't have any friends. He was kind of negative and had a pessimistic view on life. It was rather draining and disappointing. The things he would say were kind of unsettling or just unusual for me. He would text me, fantasizing about being a superhero in a roleplay where I was the damsel in distress and he was always my savior. He also had an obsession with the killer from the Scream movies. Overall, he was a nice guy but different from what I was expecting or attracted to. As time passed and Valentine's Day approached, we were talking practically every day. He asked me to be his Valentine, and I agreed somewhat reluctantly. On Valentine's Day, he walked up to me and gave me a pack of Hershey's Kisses and some Twizzlers. I don't like Twizzlers, so I handed them back to him, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and went to my class. Yes, I know that was kind of a move, but I was honestly losing interest in him at that point. I had told him before that I didn't like candy like that. During the day, I received more gifts, flowers, and candy from other friends. I saw Noah and could tell he was extremely upset by this, but he didn't say anything. He texted me later in the day saying how stupid he felt and how he was outdone by everyone else. I didn't respond. Over the next few weeks, I gradually talked to him less and less. Class became awkward, and I could tell he wanted to say something to me but never did. I later learned from my twin sister that he asked her every single day about me, if I was talking to someone else, if I liked him, and how to win me over. He confided in her that he had never even talked to a girl before. At first, I thought it was sweet, but I still no longer had a romantic interest in him. We would talk at school sometimes, and he would bring me homemade cookies and walk me to the train station. He still texted and tried to call me in the evenings after school. By then, I was talking to someone new who eventually became my boyfriend for the rest of high school, Jason. When I started dating Jason, I knew that Noah was absolutely devastated. He then started telling people around school that I was his first kiss. I was confused because I didn't know a kiss on the cheek counted as that, but to each their own. It was somewhat upsetting because people were getting the impression that we dated or that I played him, which was not the case at all. I would still talk to Noah as a friend. He was in the same grade and classes as my new boyfriend. He would always tell me how he thought Jason didn't like him and that he felt Jason knew about us. I told Noah there was nothing to know about us because we were anything but friends. Jason was totally chill, non-confrontational, and definitely not the jealous type. As the school year was coming to an end, Noah came running up to me on the last day of school and handed me a 60 to 70-page notebook, wide-ruled if it makes a difference. It explained all the ways he was in love with me, how everybody at the school thinks poorly of me, and how he could treat me better. I read it once and showed it to my twin. She told me how weird and uncomfortable it made her, and we both agreed on that. I stashed it away and didn't speak of it to anyone else. I acted like nothing happened and still talked to him as a friend occasionally. I worked a lot in high school, spent time with my boyfriend and friends, and didn't think much about Noah. Time went on, and we eventually stopped talking completely. I saw him around school, and he was never really with anyone else. He was always alone, which I didn't find strange anymore considering how awkward and quiet he could be. Fast forward another year, I'm a junior, and Noah and Jason are both seniors getting ready to graduate. Noah texted me out of the blue one day and told me he had written a book. It would mean the world to him if I could be the first to read it and give him feedback. Being the person that I am, I agreed. So, he met up with me at school the next day and handed me a thick notebook. He told me to take my time reading it and to give him honest feedback when I finished. I read the story in 4 class periods. It was around 300 pages long. The story takes place in a Game of Thrones setting. The 3 main characters are Gary, which is Noah, Lily, me, and David, Jason. For the sake of confusion, I'll be referring to the characters by our real names. The only reason I know the characters were us is Noah's story was not fictional, it was based on us, as he had described the characters as literally identical to our physical appearances. In the story, Noah was the son of the king, while the rest of us were mere peasants. Despite this, Noah was always in love with me, though I was with Jason. It was the annual time when our kingdom would go to battle with another for honor and glory, gladiator style. Noah thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to prove himself and volunteered. The night before our kingdom traveled to the battle location, my character went to Noah in the middle of the night to express her love and fear. They ended up having very graphic sex, which was truly disturbing to read. The next day, after they arrived at the place of battle, my character went to his room again, where the same graphic encounter occurred. During this, Jason came looking for my character, and we were caught. My character told Noah that she didn't really love him and ran after Jason to apologize for being a harlot. Noah was absolutely devastated and ultimately let his opponent kill him in battle because he couldn't handle the loss of the love of his life. When our kingdom returned home, Jason sneaked through the window in the middle of the night and murdered me by slitting my throat. As you can imagine, I was horrified and creeped out. I threw the book away and never told Noah what I thought about it, but he must have known because he never asked for it back. Noah and Jason both graduated, and life went on. Noah didn't try to reach out to me for a few years until I was around 20. He messaged me on Instagram in the middle of the night, saying, "Show me your feet. Submit to daddy. I always looked at your feet at school and would fantasize about them, along with links to a few foot fetish websites." I promptly blocked him. The next day, he messaged me from another account, which was a foot fetish and bondage account that he ran. He asked me why I blocked him, but I just blocked him again. Earlier last year, on my new account, he messaged me again, calling me a bitch and expressing how he wished I would die. He said he hated everyone we went to school with and fantasized about how he would kill me for all the pain I caused him. I was genuinely afraid but didn't know how to handle the situation. Was it really a death threat? I didn't know. I later learned that Noah worked at a diner down the street from my apartment, and I avoided it at all costs. I've since moved and haven't heard from Noah since. However, multiple girls I went to high school with told me that he was obsessed with me. They said he would constantly talk about me and message them the same disgusting things while he was on a drunken binge.